Have you ever had a conversation that felt like time just stopped? You sat down for a quick coffee, 2 hours later you're still there. The whole night rushed past without you noticing, and when you finally leave, you feel alive, energized, or just completely at peace, like something in you settled during that talk. That's not chemistry, that's not luck, that's a very specific kind of conversation. The kind that pulls you so deep into it that the rest of the world just disappears, like a hypnosis you actually wanted to be in. And the people who create that feeling aren't doing it by accident, they know exactly what they're doing. And in this video, I'm going to show you the 5 tools they use, so you can create that same feeling with anyone, anywhere, anytime. Let's get into it. Tool 1, the director method. Good storytelling is one of the most valuable social skills you can learn. Humans have been telling each other stories before writing even existed, around fires, in caves, across generations, before books, before the internet, before everything. Stories were how knowledge moved from one person to another. That's not a coincidence. The human brain is wired for stories in a way it simply isn't wired for facts. A list of information enters one ear and leaves the other. A good story, a real one, told well, gets inside you. You remember it, you feel it. Sometimes you think about it days later. The people who tell the best stories are among the most powerful communicators alive. They can hold a room for hours. They can make a stranger feel like an old friend in 20 minutes. They can make someone feel something. So how do you become one of them? Most people tell stories by describing how they felt. They say things like, "I was so nervous, it was incredible," or "I was completely shocked." And it lands flat, because you're telling the listener how to feel instead of letting them feel it themselves. That's why magnetic people use the director method. Instead of describing your emotions, you describe only what a camera in the room would have captured, the physical details, the specific images, what someone watching from the outside would have actually seen. Think about the difference this makes. Instead of, "I was so nervous before the presentation," a magnetic storyteller paints the actual picture. My hands were slightly shaking, I checked my phone for the time again and again, and even my legs did movements I didn't tell them to do. It's the exact same moment, but a completely different experience for the listener, because now their brain isn't just receiving a label, it's building the scene, and the emotion they feel isn't something you told them to feel, it's something they constructed themselves, which makes it 10 times more powerful. The exact same thing happens when you describe a place. Don't just say, "The place was absolutely beautiful." Instead, show them what the camera sees. The sun was hitting the water at exactly that angle where everything looked almost too bright, like someone had turned up the contrast on the whole world. One of those sentences is completely forgettable. The other one puts you right there in that moment. So when you tell a story, you need to think like the director of a movie. Not "what did I feel," but "what would the camera have seen?" Focus on the specific images, the physical details, and the small things that make a moment real. That's the difference between a story people just sit through and a story people can't look away from. The director method makes your stories unforgettable, but even the best story falls apart if it's delivered at the wrong pace. The next tool is one of the simplest on this list and has one of the highest impacts. Tool number 2, the 10% rule. The most magnetic people in a room are rarely the loudest, they are the slowest, even under pressure. Because look at what happens when someone gets anxious, excited, or desperate to impress. They instantly speed up. Their words trip over each other, sentences blur together, and they start filling every tiny micropause with, or, you know. When you speak like that, you are sending a subconscious signal to everyone in the room. Please listen fast, because I don't think I'm important enough to hold your attention for long. It forces the listener to work incredibly hard just to follow your thoughts, and worse, it completely kills your authority. So if you want to change that, then you need to slow down your speech by exactly 10%. Not 20, not 30. That would feel strange, almost like you're talking to a child. Just 10. A pace so slightly slower than your natural speed that the other person won't even notice the difference, but you will notice. Because at 10% slower, something changes. Your brain gets a little more time between sentences. The stumbles almost disappear. You stop losing your train of thought halfway through a sentence because you actually have time to find it. Your pauses will feel intentional instead of panicked. Your words will land cleaner, and you'll come across as someone who is calm, charismatic, and completely in control of what they're saying. Instead of rushing through a point so fast that halfway through you forget where it was going, you say the same thing, just slightly slower. You finish the sentence, you let it sit for a beat, and then you continue. It's one of those changes that is almost invisible to the other person, but completely changes how they experience you. Calm people feel trustworthy, and trustworthy people are easy to open up to. Slowing down your speaking pace goes hand in hand with the next tool, and together, they turn an average speaker into a highly magnetic conversationalist. Charisma Tool 3, the 2-second rule. Be honest, does this situation sound familiar to you? You are on a nice date, everything is going well. She finishes what she's saying, but before her words fully landed, you're already talking. You aren't trying to be rude, you aren't even uninterested, but that quiet silence feels so incredibly uncomfortable that your brain just panics, fires off a response, and hopes for the best. The problem is, that rush to fill the silence sends a signal you didn't mean to send. I was waiting for my turn, not actually listening to yours. And just like that, the tension spikes, the vibe dies, and she mentally checks out. If you want to completely flip the dynamic, you need to use a psychological cheat code called the 2-second rule. The tactic is dead simple. When someone finishes speaking, you don't instantly react. You sit back, hold relaxed eye contact, and let 2 full seconds of silence pass before you say a single thing. What happens in those 2 seconds is remarkable. First, the other person often keeps going. They add something, they go deeper, they say the thing they were actually building toward but didn't feel like they had space for yet. Because most people hold back the best part of what they want to say until they're sure someone actually wants to hear it. Those 2 seconds tell them, you do. Second, your response is better, because you actually processed what they said instead of just reacting to the last sentence. You connect to something they said 3 minutes ago. You ask the question that goes one level deeper. You give an answer that shows you were actually there for the whole thing. And third, you look like the most composed person in the conversation, because the ability to sit in silence without rushing to fill it is one of the rarest and most powerful social signals there is. 2 seconds of silence does more than most people do in 2 hours, but the next tool goes even deeper. Tool 4, the emotional radar. Most men are completely invisible in conversations, and they have no idea why. While most guys are collecting data like a computer, truly charismatic men are doing something completely different. They use a psychological cheat code I call the emotional radar. They don't just listen to the words, they notice the exact moment her voice gets a little quieter. They watch for the slight shift in posture, or the exact second her eyes wander because a real memory just hit her. Those tiny signals are the actual conversation, and if you keep scrolling past them, you will stay forgettable forever. Here's the shift you need to make. Listen for facts, but watch for emotions. And when you feel emotion in what someone is sharing, go there, dig deeper. If they're telling you about a work project, factually it's fine, but their energy drops slightly when they mention their manager. A guy who is only focused on the facts nods and says, "Oh cool," while moving on to the next topic. But instead, you step in and dig deeper. I feel like your manager is making things worse than necessary. How is he handling the situation? Now you're in a real conversation, because you notice something they didn't even realize they were showing. It might even seem like you're reading her mind because she is not used to this level of attention. Here is another example. Someone mentions in passing that they used to play piano as a kid, but stopped. Their voice has a tiny flicker of something when they say it. Instead of nodding and moving on, you ask, "Do you miss it?" 4 words, and suddenly they're somewhere completely different. Somewhere real, because you went where the emotion was pointing instead of what the words were saying. This is what makes certain conversations feel like they mean something while others just go in circles. Facts are the surface, emotions are the depth, and the best conversations live in depth. Tracking emotions moves conversations into real territory, but the last tool is the one that makes the other person feel genuinely connected to you, without you ever making a direct move to create that feeling. Tool 5. The third person compliment. You've probably been in this situation. You want to tell someone something genuinely positive, that you find their ambition attractive, that their passion for what they do is rare, that you admire how they handle things. But saying it directly feels too much, too forward, like you're trying to impress them, so you don't say it at all. Here's a way to say it that lands better than the direct version ever would. The third person compliment. Instead of complimenting them directly for a quality they have, tell a short story about someone else who has that same quality, and make it clear you find it genuinely remarkable. If you're talking to someone and you notice they light up when they talk about their business, there's a real passion there. You want them to know you find that attractive. Instead of saying, "I think it's really attractive that you're so passionate about what you do," which sounds like a line, you say, "My sister also started her own thing about a year ago. When she talks about it, her whole face changes." I find people like that genuinely inspiring, the ones who actually care about what they're building instead of just going through the motions. You didn't compliment them directly, but they heard it, and because it came through a story, something real, something personal, it landed completely differently. There's a psychological phenomenon called spontaneous trait transference. When you describe a quality in someone else, the person you're talking to unconsciously associates that quality and the positive feeling around it with you, not the person in your story, you. So you're not just making them feel seen, you're creating a warm association with your presence that they can't quite explain. They just know that talking to you feels good. Use it sparingly. One well-placed third-person compliment in a conversation does far more than 5 direct ones, because it feels like a window into how you actually think, not a move you're making. These 5 tools together don't just make you better at conversations, they make people feel something when they talk to you, something they can't quite name, something that makes them want to do it again and again. And if you made it to the end of this video, that already puts you in a rare group. Most people scroll past, you stayed. So here's something for you. We built a free charisma test. It takes 5 minutes and it tells you exactly where you stand right now, which areas you're already strong in and where the biggest room for growth is. Link is in the description. Take the quick test and comment your personal charisma score below. Let's see who has the most charisma.